On today's horribly edited video, I want to talk a little bit about superdwarf and dwarf sizes, percentages. What exactly does that mean? There are a lot of other videos out there that explain this probably better than I am about to do. However, I get this question a lot, and I think the more of us that have information out there to share with other people who might be confused can be helpful, because knowledge is power. So yeah, let's talk about it. Through the forest. There's Stella. Hi, Stella. So Stella, cozy babe, is a superdwarf reticulated python. She is a superdwarf reticulated python because she is 50% Calatoa, and that, by industry standards, means that she qualifies to be labeled as a superdwarf. Now, here's the wonky thing. Dwarf and superdwarf actually refer to various localities of reticulated python. So there's a bunch of different islands: Jampea, Kalatoa, Kayuwati, Tambalongan, Selayar, a bunch of smaller islands around Indonesia where these smaller species of reticulated pythons live. The dwarf, superdwarf terms are literally just industry standard terms. In order to list an animal or refer to an animal as a true dwarf, superdwarf, they need to have at least 50% of one of those locality animals in their bloodline. Now, what exactly does that mean in reference to size? Well, it kind of depends, because let's break it down. Stella, hey sweetie pie, what are you doing, honey bun? Stella is 12 feet long. Her dad was pure Calatoa. Her mom was a mainland reticulated python with a little bit of Jampea, which is a dwarf locality. So all of those babies, one of which was beautiful Miss Stella, are 50% Calatoa with a little pinch of Jamp. I want to say she's 6.25% Jamp, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, I think it's 6.25, so a very small percentage of Jampea. She's 12 feet. She's a superdwarf by industry standards. That's still a lot of snake, but compared to a mainland reticulated python, it's still pretty small. All right, you still with me? Things are about to get even more confusing. So we do have another superdwarf female, April O'Neil. Let me show you. She is in shed right now, so she's gonna be a little potato-y. Hi, pretty girl, are you a potato? So this is April O'Neil. She is 50% Kayuwati. She is just over 9 feet long and 5 years old. That's right, she turned 5 this year. Stella is 9 years old, for comparison. So she is still growing. We're not exactly sure how big she will get. I'm actually honestly not sure whether dad or mom was the Kayuwati or the mainland influence with this girl. I should find that out, because some breeders have noticed that, and I have not been doing this near long enough to know how accurate this is, but some reliable breeders have found that the animals in a clutch tend to lean towards the size of mom versus dad. So if you have, for example, Stella, whose dad was even if dad was a teeny tiny Calatoa, mom was a mainland retic. So that would influence a little bit more the fact that she's a little bit bigger. Aries is also in shed, but let's dive a little bit deeper. So he is a little over 7 feet. He is a little over 3.5 years old. He's also a potato. Look at you, buddy. He is super dwarf. He is mixed locality, often referred to as old school superdwarf. What the crap does that mean? So mixed locality simply refers to the fact that the animals that were his mom and dad had some percentage from a superdwarf animal that they know that it came from one of the superdwarf islands, but they don't know which one. So that's when you get the term mixed locality or old school superdwarf. I prefer the term mixed locality. I think it's a little bit more transparent. So that is what that whole mixed locality, old school superdwarf is all about. If you've ever seen that, that is why. His his and Stella's babies from the clutch that we had last year from Stella. I guess it was technically this year. They hatched in May. It was last season. They are 25% Kalatoa because mom is 50%. You have to divide that in half. 25% old school super dwarf or mixed locality super dwarf. So there's still 50% super dwarf in total, but we are very transparent in listing all of those different locality or, you know, old school super dwarf terms to be super transparent in terms of what percentage is coming from where. All right, so we have industry standards versus... All right, let's try that again. So we have the influence of locality percentage or combination thereof, as well as size of parents and which parent that size is coming from. So let's talk a little bit more about genetics. I know what you're thinking. Aren't localities genetic? Yes. And it's also important to know that different animals, I'm blinding now, different animals can often just have smaller genetics. So you do have smaller mainlands from smaller bloodlines that just don't get as big. There's also different localities of mainlands. I need to familiarize myself with that. We get so focused on the different localities of dwarf and super dwarf that I think often the mainland locality becomes like second thought. So I would like to learn more about that. That is a kind of fault of my own. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. There are smaller mainlands, there are kind of larger dwarf localities. So there's a lot of variables when it comes to what dwarf, super dwarf, and all these different localities mean. All right, so say all of that to show you, hi, you're a little bit in food mode. What are you doing? You'll find out soon enough that there is no food involved. So this is Centauri. Centauri is a dwarf. She is 37.5% Jamp, 12.5% Kalatoa. Hi, that's not food. It's my hand. But she is pretty decent size. She is almost as big as Aries. She is getting an upgrade. She's in a way too small enclosure right now. She is getting an upgrade soon. So dwarf. By industry standards, she's still 50% total. She's 37.5% Jampea. That is a dwarf locality. She is 12.5% Kalatoa. That is a super dwarf locality. Add those two together, you get 50%. So because the majority of that 50% is dwarf, it needs to be 50% total super dwarf localities in order to qualify calling them super dwarf by industry standards, because 37.5% of that influence is from a dwarf locality for this particular snake. She's a dwarf. You still with me? If you're not, that's totally fine. This is kind of dry information, but it's really important because people will throw around numbers or be told an animal is a certain thing when they don't really truly understand what that certain thing actually means. Or they're told something like, oh yeah, this baby is a super dwarf, and then find out later that it's got like 12.5% Kalatoa. Technically, it has super dwarf blood in it, but by industry standards, it's not a super dwarf. Do you still think I'm food? It's not food. It's a phone. She's just, what are you doing? Oh my gosh. Are you disappointed that I am not food? All right, you ready for this little fun genetic little bit of magic that won't make any sense at all? Come here, let me get her out. All right, so just to make all of this even more confusing, this is Chihaya. She is 37.5% Jampea, same percentage as Centauri. She is 25% Kalatoa. Do you know what that would make her by industry standards? So she totals more than 50%. So she would be 50%, but not super dwarf. She's technically a dwarf because she doesn't have 50% super dwarf in total. She only has 25%, but she's 37.5% Jamp. So in total, it's over 50%, but it's mostly dwarf. So she's considered a dwarf. Here's where things get really wonky though, because that wasn't enough. Chihaya is our smallest girl. She will probably remain our smallest girl, even though Stella is super dwarf, because she comes from very small genetics. Her mom is, I believe, under 10 feet and 11 years old. So she is, and she's a higher percentage than Mom was. She's an orange glow het anery, by the way, for anybody wondering. She's a beautiful, beautiful girl. She's a little more shy, but she's very sweet. So yeah, she's going to stay pretty tiny, which I'm pretty stoked about. I think that 9 to 10 foot range is kind of perfect size. Honey, she could even stay smaller than that. We're not sure yet, but she does come from very small genetics. She's a dwarf reticulated python, but she's going to be smaller than our super dwarf girl. So part of why I wanted to share all of this with everyone, with y'all, I'm from Oregon, I'm not from Texas. I don't know why I say y'all all the time, is because knowing all of those different variables in terms of size influence is really important. So you know, whenever you're going in to purchase an animal, you're well informed on what you're getting. The more you know about the animal's ancestry, parents, grandparents, as far back as you can go, the better. Now, there are other factors. I know we needed more factors into what can influence size. One of them is feeding. So if animals are like maintenance fed, obviously, that means that they are fed kind of the minimal amount of food to ensure that they're healthy. For us here, we prefer feeding so they're not overweight, but we like them nice and healthy. So they're growing, our goal is to have them grow at a normal rate you would see a healthy animal in the wild growing. So that is one of the factors. Another factor is health issues. So this little baby is Etoile. She is one of Aries and Stella's babies. She is our prolapse girl. Now, if you want to learn more about her situation, her treatment for the recurring prolapses that she's been having, we have a couple videos in our Curly Hair Keeper Facebook group. It's a private group. I will link it below if you're interested in joining. Request it. Let me know that you found us on Facebook. But she is much smaller, significantly smaller than her clutch mates. Speaking of, this is Irene. So it might be hard to tell over video, but Irene is much bigger than Etoile. The last time I weighed Etoile, she was a good 50 grams smaller, and I think the gap has even widened since at this point, because she's had to take a couple of breaks from feeding. We've had to do some antibiotic injections. There's a couple of things going on with her that are stunting her growth a bit. Now, I do not know if this stunted growth will continue through adulthood and she'll just wind up being a smaller snake, or if at whatever point she just starts picking up speed and gaining size to catch up with her siblings. I don't know. Time will tell. But that is another factor. Snakes are funky. They're very resilient. They tend to grow whether you want them to or not. So, holy crap, she's so pretty. I say all of this and share all of that information to say, know your information, ask questions of your breeders. Well-informed breeders will know how to answer your questions in terms of localities and percentages and parent sizes and all of that stuff. If they don't know, hopefully they will admit it and say, hey, I'm not sure, let me find it out. We know all of the producers of all of the animals that we own, so we're able to kind of track back and contact past breeders if we want that additional information, which Jody always wants, which is great. So he has a lot of additional information in terms of her parents, Stella's grandparents, I believe. So yeah. Hi, Raiden. They're all hungry because it's feeding day tomorrow. That's Raiden. He's also way bigger than Etoile. Wait for it. There she is. Hopefully that was helpful. It might have been more confusing than it was helpful, but do your research. Hopefully that clarified a little bit of what dwarf and super dwarf actually means and the different other things that can influence size and why it's important to ask questions and get as much information about these animals as possible. So yeah, get that knowledge, ask those questions. If you have any remaining questions, please throw them in the comments below. I will answer them if I can. If I don't know the answer, I can more than likely find someone who does. Garrett Hartle is also another great one. He has a great video focused on the different localities as well. So yeah. All right. She's so sweet. Thank you for watching. I hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. And yeah, I guess I will catch you on the next one. I have all of the links to all of the things down below, including enclosures that we use and yummy coffee links, all of that stuff. So yeah, I'll catch you on the next one. Bye. La, what are you doing? You're in shed, sweetie pie. Are you being curious? I'm so excited to get your new enclosure. It's going to be so much bigger than this one. It's going to be bioactive. So excited.